I was just about to make a wallpaper, and I figured it would be a good time to show you guys Diffusion B, which is a image generation that uses Stable Diffusion and some of the other open source LLMs in order to make stuff. And obviously is something that if you're a programmer, there's definitely APIs you can use within Python or JavaScript to do something similar. But if you're on a Mac, this is one of the only ways to do it just kind of natively without having to do too much setup. There's not too many other apps out there that'll let you do it. So pretty familiar UI if you're used to doing anything like the text generation web UI or any of the other LLMs where you can select your model. And if you have multiple installed, these are the ones that I've been trying out, but Stable Diffusion XL is probably the way to go. You can add more models, either locally downloading them and adding them to here, or you could just import whatever they have here available. And it has a lot of interesting features. You can actually generate stuff. Once you've generated a few, you can actually go back and generate similar images. So that's what we're going to do because I like this kind of style. And what I do is I click generate similar images and then I stop it. That is just so I can load all the prompts and all the settings and all the stuff that I had before. All I'm going to do here for the sake of wallpaper is change this to be landscape instead of portrait. And then I'll say something like a giant W logo. WT logo in front of a mountain range at sunset. And we'll see what that does. And right now this is using Stable Diffusion XL base because that's what we were using for those other images. So all the settings are the same, but you can basically create as many images in this batch as you want. You can adjust the seed, and the seed is just for randomness. So if you want stuff that's similar, you'll probably use a similar seed to what you've liked. But if you set this to 0, it's just going to be a random seed. Sampling steps, you actually don't need them this high to begin with. For testing, you could set them lower. I just know this is what's been working for this specific prompt and some of this stuff. These are negative prompts here that you can add. Basically, it's the stuff that you don't, it's the anti of whatever your prompt is. So you don't want it to be photorealistic. You don't want it to be a photo. You don't want it to have person or character or multiple limbs or fingers and ugly and furniture. And, so anything that you don't want it to be, you can add here. And then if you're just testing out, what I might do is set the seed to 0 and then generate like 10 images at a lower sampling step, like 10 or 5 even, just to get a feel for what they all look like. And then you could choose one and generate from there. So actually, since this is taking a little bit, I'm going to do that. I'm just going to go ahead and set this to be something like 7 or 10. And then I'll also do lower resolution. So I'll go down to like 640 by 760 a bit. We'll do something like that just so it's a little bit quicker to generate. And then we can bump up both resolution and sampling steps. I'm going to stop all. I'm going to also set the seed. And you can see that even though this is stopping, I can still add this to the queue. So you can have multiple things going at once, which is pretty interesting. Okay, so I took about 15 seconds. And you can see more or less what this looks like. I'm going to modify this to say a cartoon in the style of cartoon. We'll just add cartoon in there a few times to see if it does it differently. These are all okay, but sounds bluish, Billie Eilish, bluish tones. Okay, so I'm going to stop all of these. And I'm going to go back to generate with this new. And if we go to history, we can actually see that those are still saved. So we do have a database with some of this stuff. And this is what I've been experimenting with for a lot of the thumbnail things to keep them offline. Even the older ones are actually pretty good, but we'll just stick with that. Now go back to text to image and we'll see what's going on here. So one thing to note is that you will be using a few gigs of storage just housing all these models, and you will also be using a little bit of storage housing your database, basically your history. So you can clear these out if you want to, but I I haven't since I started using it. So there's months of stuff in here that are just sitting there, and you may or may not want that. So you can clear them out as you go, but you can also delete individual ones. So if there's some that are definitely not useful, you can delete those. But I would recommend you keep your history, because that way you know what works, what doesn't work, and you kind of get a feel for everything. Okay, so based on the style of these, I'm thinking it's looking okay. And I think once we scale up the sample rate, then we'll get more definition in this stuff out here. I do like the way that the mountain ranges are coming out. It's kind of similar to this style back here. It's not adding the logo to it, but there's something we could do about that later, which with image in painting. I don't think I'm actually going to do it just because I don't want to take too much time. I just want something a little different. So I think the one I like is this one, because this looks kind of cool. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to stop it. I'm going to go to this one and click generate similar image. I'm going to stop it. Technically, I think you could just use parameters, but I can't remember if it actually, let me just click it. So I go to history and copy parameters. I don't know where you paste it. Never mind. I'm just going to do the same thing. So generate similar images. I'm going to stop it. I'm going to set this to 10. And this time I'm going to bring it up to what I had it before, 1080 and 640. You don't need to go all the way because we're going to upscale it in a bit. And since it's vector art, it should be okay. Generate. So it should take about maybe a minute or two per image. So since it's 10 of them, it's probably just going to take 20 minutes to actually do them all. Okay, so that's actually looking pretty good. So yeah, so I'm going to go ahead and bring up the samples back to 40, and the more samples is basically how many iterations it's going over it, and it'll add more and more as it goes along. So I'll do 15 images. I'll keep that same seed and then generate, and then I'll come back to it when it's done and we'll see what we got. After a short little walk with Max and some coffee, I imagine this took about an image per minute type of thing. So minute per image. There's 15 of them, so maybe like 15-ish, 20 minutes. And we see that most of these are pretty good. Since we use this very specific seed, most of these actually look fairly similar. Since it's a wallpaper, I don't think I actually want this giant V thing. So I think the one I'll probably go with is this one. So it's similar enough to what I already have that I know I'll enjoy it, but it's small. It's different enough that it'll be at least a change. So what I can do here is you can see it's pretty fuzzy, especially if I zoom out, you can see there's not a lot of sharp detail. So what I can go ahead and do is click on actions and send to upscaler. So these are the other things that you can do with it. You could save it and it'll just save a PNG to wherever you want. You could do image to image to use this as like a starting point for another new image. So you can give it a different prompt and then it'll just kind of use this shape to iron it out. AI canvas, I don't remember what that one does, but in painting is if you want to erase a part to refill it with something else. This, I guess, is image to image with these exact same parameters, so you don't have to redo them. But I'm just going to go ahead and do send to upscaler. And there's only one. This is a very straightforward thing. You can actually do real ESR GAN in Python. There is a library available for it. I've used it for years for like upscaling stuff, and it's actually really solid. Real ESR GAN is actually really great for also doing animation rendering cleanup, so you can render them a lot smaller, which means you can render 3D stuff out of like Blender a lot quicker and then just upscale them later, and it actually turns out pretty good. So you can see here, now if I click on it and I zoom out, it has significantly sharper borders. I don't necessarily like the way these highlights look like a stroke outline, but I think it works. So I'm going to go ahead and save this on my desktop and just image.png, and there it is. You can go ahead and right click on that and do set desktop picture. So that was pretty much it. And again, it has that artistic style because we chose to do, it's more of a logo design kind of thing. And then we made sure to add things that were telling it not to be photorealistic or anything like that. And then made sure to specify cartoon like 3 times in the thing. So we got this thing that's pretty cool. I'm very happy with it. It's going to be my wallpaper for a little bit. Maybe overnight I'll leave this doing other ones, but for now that's pretty good. This one was a little bit too basic. These are some other versions that I created. So this was from that first sort of iteration. This is the one that we ended up on. I tweaked it a little bit, mainly just adding more samples and increasing the resolution. You could see that this is significantly different from even this. So I'm just going back and trying a few different models. In this case, right now, I'm trying Juggernaut Excel, and we could see some of these that are pretty interesting. I also tweaked the prompt, added a few more things like fog, lens flare, and then some movie inspiration like Tron, Blade Runner, Ready Player One, uh, Cyberpunk, just to see what it does. And then generation style, which I'm pretty sure is just adding a little bit of prompting behind the scenes to, in the style of vector art or that sort of thing. So that is that. Right now I set it back to 10 sampling steps just so we can get some quicker renders. You can see this is kind of popping them up pretty quick. With some of the other styles, you can see kind of what I was getting, where, I removed the logo thing to, include WT, because most of them weren't getting it, not with at least, increasing the prompt a little bit more. I tried one that was the 3D cartoon thing, and it was kind of starting off with this. It was probably would have been a more Disney style kind of thing. These, I don't know what the hell that is. But this is actually the current one I think that I have. So I hadn't yet changed the prompt, but I did change the seed and the resolution a little bit from this version where we were, let's see, what resolution was this? So 1080p. So even increasing the resolution a little bit has a difference as to what's going on. So now I'm just trying a few different models to get a feel for maybe some of these different things, because this is really good. So maybe increasing the resolution here on that and then rendering it out again. This is closer to what I was actually looking for. This Juggernaut XL, that model with the digital art generation style. And you can see that there's a little bit more dimensionality to it. It's a little bit more of a, kind of like a drawing, like a Procreate drawing kind of thing, where it's not necessarily just line art, but there's a little bit more of a photorealistic kind of aspect to it. Outside of that, there wasn't really too much that changed there. And then we have these that are the vector art. These were the ones that I kind of landed on now. So I increased the resolution. You can see I ran out of storage. And this is where all your images are going to be stored. They just get shoved into the Diffusion B folder. And you can see these with the retro game generation style, combined with the prompt, kind of give you this sort of thing. And then once we upscale, we'll get more detail into all of these little areas. So these are kind of cool. I'm going to try this last one, which is cinematic, just to get a feel for what this does. I don't think I was looking for anything that was too photorealistic, but these actually look pretty good. So I'm going to let it run and see kind of what it comes up with. And if there's anything interesting, then I will let it run for 100 images and pick the 10 best ones that I like and post those to the Patreon. Going here. It has about 62 images downloaded. Most of them look pretty good. So it has about 40 left. And instead of picking 10, actually, what I decided I'm going to do is just upscale all of them and then add them to the Patreon. So upscale all of them. And then, so what I decided to do was just upscale all of them and then add them to the Patreon. And in order to do this in a way that I don't lose my mind, I'm just going straight to the real ESRGAN repo, which is a little dated at this point, but it works. So instead of doing the Python scripting for it, I'm actually just going to do some shell scripting, because they offer some executables, and then I could just do this in the command line and iterate over the folder once they're all done. And it'll look something like this, where I just call the executable, the input image, and then where it's going. In my case, I'm just going to do a folder, and then I have to tell it specifically which model to use. There's a few different models. If I do ls models, these are the ones that are available to this version. The executables seem to be only available for a previous version, so not the latest version, but this version down here. There's the default, which is this one, I believe, or doesn't matter. I tested out a few, and the idea is that this is the original file. This is the file upscaler with the default, and it's not too bad. The mountains actually look pretty good. This is the version with the anime, so upscale 4x, the anime version, and then this one's just the upscale 4x, and this one looks a little bit more realistic, even though it's still softer. It seems to try to hold more detail and stuff, but since all I want is the the sharp edges, it's kind of more of that low, kind of like that pixel art kind of situation, I think I'm going to go for this one, which was this version here, with X4 Plus dash anime. And that'll look something similar like the way I convert all the other things. So it'll probably just be list, um, output images, and that'll go into parallel. I'll probably have like 4 jobs running because this is on CPU, it's not GPU, so it should be fine. And then it'll, call that thing with -I and the input file. And then for -O, it says I can take a path for the output. So I think I'm just going to put upscaled, upscaled as the output. And then -N is going to be, um, whatever that model thing was here. So it's going to copy this. And that's basically what I'm going to do. It's not going to run now because there's no images folder, and there's no, what do you call it? There's nothing. Oh, actually, it would be this. So just slash, since the ls is not going to give you the full file path. It's just going to give you the file name. So I could do this. So ls output images, and it's going to pipe that list of images into this command. It'll just do it automatically for me. I won't have to sit around and do it. That would look like as a wallpaper. So you can see that since it's upscaling it by 4x, we still get a lot of detail here in the mountains, and the city doesn't really matter too much. This is not ultimately the image I'm going to go with, but I did set it so you can see that it actually works pretty amazingly. So be sure to check out the files on the Patreon if you want to check them out. So with that, I'm just going to end this video here, and then I'll post the images on Patreon, and hopefully this was helpful. This is also something you can use if you're trying to restore some images that are older, like cell phone images or even video. It actually does work for that. Just split the thing up into frames, I think is how it works. And you can get really a lot cleaner images with this sort of thing. If you want to see a video specifically on that, just let me know and I'll post something up. Don't forget to like and subscribe, and I will see you guys in the next video.